Hi guys, and welcome back to Hypershare Tutorials. In today's tutorial we're going to be covering the control system which I was implementing, which is when you look at an object it will highlight the color and that will give an indication to the player what we can pull towards the player and throw it at the enemy. Now in this video we're just going to be covering the highlight topic. So we're going to be looking at an object, we're going to be shooting a ray cast towards it, and we're going to be changing the color. So you should have something that looks like this. So if you look at the tire, the ray cast is hitting directly from the center of the camera and it's ignoring the player and only looking for certain objects. Once it detects that object, it then highlights it in red. So that's what we're going to be covering today. Now if you don't remember what this is, you're going to see a quick little preview popping up over in the corner of what this is supposed to be. So let's crack on and let's make this system. So I'm just going to stop the game. Right, so in order to do the following, we need to first place some objects in our scene like you see I've done. So go ahead and take your time and place the objects you want to throw around. So I've done that already just to save time in the tutorial. Second thing is you need to rename these objects. So if I click on this tire for example, you can see I've got it tagged as select object and I've got the layer select as select object as well. Now the reason I'm doing this is when we hit the collider on this, I want to look for its tag, and it's currently tagged as select object, and I want to look for the layer because I want the raycast to only find these layers and ignore everything else. Now if it hasn't got a box collider around it, it won't detect it. You could get away with putting a mesh collider on it as well, and that should work. Please ignore this script, it shouldn't be on there. So that's the first thing you should do while making anything script wise. So please make sure you've got your objects tagged as select object and select object as the layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the player and I'm going to create a new script. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to type in player object highlight like so. Just hit enter and it will say, do you want to make a new script named player object highlight? Just click create and add, and that will take a couple of seconds to compile and open up in Visual Studios. If it doesn't open, you can come back here and we can double click and open. So this is what we should have. I'm going to get rid of this and I'm going to get rid of that. We obviously know what the start function and the update functions are for. So let's start defining the variables we need. So the first one I need is a public transform, and I'm going to call this main selection. I'll explain this in a minute. So what this is basically it's going to hold the transform that we're looking at. So this is the object, for example the tire, and in that tire we're going to be getting its render, for example. So that's pretty much what this is doing, okay? So it knows what render is changing on. So that's perfectly fine. Okay, once you've done that, we can go ahead and make another one. I'm going to call this temp selection. This is for the raycast, which we need in a minute. So I'll leave that as that. That's the only two transforms that you will need. So the next one you need is public layer mask, and I'm going to call this layer mask with a lowercase l. The next one you need is public camera, and I'm just going to call this short for cam. The next one you need is a public raycast hit, and I'm going to call this hit. Next one you need is public color, and I'm going to call the first one highlighted matte, and the next one I'm just going to call default matte, like so. Okay, so that's the two colors. So the highlighted will be basically when we look at an object, it will change it to the highlight color, and the default is when we don't have the raycast hitting it anymore, it will change it back to default. which is the standard color, which is gray or white. That's perfectly fine. The next one we need is a public render, because we need to make sure we're changing the material color. So we're going to get that, and we're going to call this selection render, like so. We need another one which will come in handy later on. We're going to call this a public bool. What did I call this? Is highlighted. This will come handy later on. We do need that, but we won't be using it in this tutorial. Okay. Next one I need is public float, and I'm going to use this as raycast range, for example, like that. Don't think we need any more floats. Actually, we do need one more, but not for this tutorial, for the next one that follows. And we're going to call this power throw. Okay, like that. The next one you need is, we actually need another bool, bear with me, sorry. And we're going to call this pull object ready, like so. Okay, save that. I did forget one more transform, which is pull object distance, short for DES. Okay, that's the free transform we need. So apologies for that. I knew I was forgetting something. Do I need any other more booleans? Yes, I do. Please also make lock raycast. Oops. If I can spell. That's one we need, and another one we need is throw power active. Alright, that should be enough booleans. And the final thing we need is the animation, which we'll add later on. So I'm going to call this public animator I believe it's called, yeah, it's called animator, that's correct, yeah. And I'm going to call this short for ANI, short for animation, okay. And we can save that. Well, actually no, let's call this select anim, like so. Hit save. So for right now, that's all the variables we need, and there isn't anything else that's really important. And I did forget one, which is the most important one, obviously. So public, I'm gonna call this a string. This is very important, so please make sure we add this. I did forget this. And I'm gonna call this selected object, like so. And it's just gonna be equals to the tag we named. So I'm gonna call it select OBJ, like so. Alright, so let's save that and just put closing semicolons at the end. Should be alright. Now in the update, the first thing we want to say is if main selection, which is the object we're looking at, equals null, if there's nothing highlighted by our raycast, let's just leave that as null, okay? So, and I'm going to say main selection equals null, like so. That's all we need for the first part. I'm just going to put a line in here so you don't confuse. I'm going to call this end of update. Okay. And I'm going to put one over here. I'm going to put start of update. Right. Now let's create our raycast. So raycast highlight system. And we're going to start coding this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to put this in a boolean, the one we created above. Now to do that, all you would do is put if, open bracket, close bracket, open curly brace and closing curly brace. Just leave a space in between. And I'm going to say if lock raycast equals false, then this raycast will only work. Okay, if it's active, then it should just stop working. Then I'm going to say if open bracket close bracket physics dot raycast. Then I'm going to put an open bracket, and now it's going to ask the direction of the ray, and the direction of the ray is from the camera, so cam dot transform, sorry about that, transform dot position, comma, then we're going to say cam dot transform direction, and I'm going to put open bracket, I'm going to put a vector 3 dot forward. We're going to shoot the ray forward. Okay, just want to make sure which one closes that one. Yeah, so that one closes the vector 3, that's fine. After that one you want to put out, so you want to shoot the ray outwards, and we have a variable called hit already, so we can just put hit over here. The length for the ray, I'm going to put ray range, which I made above. Okay, like so. And then finally, we want to make sure we only select certain layers, so I'm going to put layers mask. Okay, that should be all. And then after this, you put two open brackets, curly braces like so, and leave a space. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to draw the actual line so we can see it. I'm just going to say debug dot draw ray. Where is it? Draw ray. There we go. And this is going to be from the camera. So cam dot transform dot position. Oops. Comma cam dot transform direction, open bracket, vector 3 dot forward, and then after this we're going to times that by hit dot distance, comma, and the color of the ray, you can choose any, it's up to you. I'm just going to go with a solid red. Alright, and then put a closing semicolon. So that's just going to draw out the ray for us. Now, the first thing I want to do is, as soon as we make the raycast pop out, I want to get the object we hit. So I'm going to say selection. Oops. I call it temp selection, sorry. There we go. Temp selection. Equals to hit dot collider dot transform. All it's saying is basically the temp selection's value will equals to what the raycast hits, and it's just going to get the transform by looking for the collider. Okay, so it's just going to put the name of the object in this temp variable for us, which will later on become this permanent one over here. Okay, we also want select render, where is it? Selection render, I think I called it. Go with me, let me just double check the name in. Yeah, selection render. And we're going to call this equals selection, temp selection. And we're going to get component. Okay. Less than sign and greater than sign, and we want to get the render property like so, open bracket close bracket and closing curly brace. And also we need to get the rigid body of the object, which is rigid body main, I believe I called it, unless I didn't make this, did I? Pretty sure I did. No, I didn't. So I did miss something, apologies. We actually need to make one of our rigid body variable as well. So let's just add that in. So we can just add that underneath here. I'm going to call this public rigid body, like so, and I'm going to call this rigid body main, like so. Alright, sorry about this, I knew I forgot something. So I'm going to put rigid body main equals temp selection dot get component, and I'm going to say rigid body. So this will tell the system to also get its rigid body once we've hit the object. Right? Perfect. So that's the first thing you should do. So basically we're saying get all these properties once we hit the object. So first of all, temp selection will be equals to what we hit with the raycast. So it's going to hit the object, find its collider and get its transform. Selection render will then be equals to temp selection, which will be the object we hit and find its renderer, and then obviously at the same time it will find the rigid body attached to that object. Okay, then I'm going to say if open bracket, close bracket, open curly brace and closing curly brace. Bear with me. There we are. Right, so in here I'm going to say selection renderer equals, sorry, nope, temp selection dot tag equals selected object. Yeah, so what we're saying here is if we hit the object which the raycast found, and if its tag is equals to this one, we want something to happen. Okay, and in this case all we're going to say is if we hit that object, if open bracket close bracket selection renderer equals null, no sorry, is not equals to null, which means if we found the renderer on the object, do something. Okay, and inside here I'm going to say selection render dot material dot color equals highlighted matte, like so. And if we don't find anything, we want something to happen also. Okay, but after these two closing curly braces underneath here, we want main selection to be equals to temp selection. Alright, so this is going to change this variable's object to the temp selection, what object we're currently highlighting. And then underneath this line, which closes the raycast, you want to put if open bracket main selection equals null, open close bracket, and all you're going to say is selection renderer dot material dot color equals default matte, like so. And that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do to highlight the object and to make it change colors. So let's go back into Unity and let's see what happens. Alright, so the script has fully compiled. So you can see all the dependencies have been created. Let's first of all change the highlighted color. I'm going to go with possibly a red, just because it's sharp, just for now. And this is temporary, I will change this in the future. And the default color, I'm just going to set it as white, so it's a standard color, or like a light gray, like so. Alright, that should be all we need for now. I'm just going to make sure everything on the object is correct. So it's got a rigid body attached, so please make sure the objects that you want selected do have a rigid body on them. It's got a box collider, which I'm happy with. And I'm just going to check these ones here, for example. These don't have it, so what I will do, please ignore this script. It's got a mesh collider, which is fine. It does need a rigid body. I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to add a rigid body. I want this selected. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to change it to select object. I'm going to change this one to select object as well. It's got a mesh collider. It's got rigid body. That's fine. You have to make sure you got the layer name selected, please. Just make sure you do. And it's selected correctly in the tags. So I've got LODs here, for example, because objects come with LOD. It's got one LOD as select object, and second one inside that is select object as well. Alright, good. And this one here, I'm just going to double check this. I'm just going to click on LOD 0. Yep, it's got that marked as that. It's got the mesh collider. It's got a box collider. You might not need them both, but I'll leave it for now. I'm just going to get rid of this script. It's pointless. Okay, just going to check the other one quickly. Okay, it's going to add the rigid body. And I'm going to just make sure I'm going to add a box collider just for the safe side, because sometimes mesh colliders give me headaches. That should be alright. So these three objects, that should change colors once we hit them. Alright. And just to go through that again, please make sure the tag as select object and layer as select object. Now if you don't know how to do that, if you want to add a object as a tag, sorry, if you want to add a tag to an object, you go to the bottom over here, add tag, and you click on this plus sign and add a tag. If you want to add layer, it's the same thing, add layer, come in here and you put the layer's name. I've already done that. Alright, let's go back into the player. Where is it gone? Where is it gone? We need to change the layer mask, so we only need to hit objects which are called select obj, like so. Okay, and that's the layer for these objects. It won't hit nothing else. So let's see what happens if we run the game now. So I'm just going to put this screen on one side, just minimize it like that. Let's hit save and let's play, and let's see what happens. So what does it say? The robot cam. Oops, my apologies, I did forget something. So I didn't attach the camera over here. So what you want to do inside your player, you want to get the main camera and you want to drag that on there. Okay, and I'm just going to, leave the player selected for now, because I just want to make sure the ray's popping up. Even though it causes a bit of a lag, I don't really care at this point. But it's just to see if it pops up. So we've got the main camera selected on there. Let's see what happens now. And another thing is apology ray range, which I forgot to do. I'm just going to put 100 for now. There you go. It's found the object, but it hasn't changed it back to its default. So, okay, we've got the first part working, which is fantastic. Okay, so look, you can find it. The ray car shoots at it. It's found the object, but it hasn't changed it back to the normal color. Now the reason is, if you look at the main selection, it hasn't changed. And that's what we need to go back to the script and find out why. So let's just stop the game for now. I'm going to quickly set the ray range to 100. Oops. Or 250 if you like. Oh, 150. Been picky. Save it. Let's go back into our script and find out what happened. Right, so let's just quickly analyze this. So we've got that one, that closes that closes the ray, that closes off the lock ray cast. Aha, this is the problem. Just put one equal sign, please, in the main selection. Alright, let's just hit save and let's go back into Unity and see what happens. Alright, so that's fully compiled. Let's run the game and see what happens. Alright, so... oh, look, it did work. Because I did see it flash like that. So... there you go, I saw it. That's the object. Now look away, it's not red any longer. Look away, it's not red. Highlighted, red. The only problem I have right now is if I stop the game and rerun it, you don't actually get to see the object you're looking at, if that makes sense. So I'm going to reposition the camera. I've noticed this before. So like here for example, I've selected it right now. You can see in the scene mode, but from our angle we can't see it. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is possibly I'm going to select the main player. And I'm going to look for the look at object, and I'm going to change this. Just going to put it here a bit, okay? Just going to hit. Then I'm going to click on cam free look. Might change that to this and see what happens. Okay, it seems to be better. So I'm going to position this like so. Let's see what happens when I run it, because I might rechange these over here. So let's see. It's worth testing it, I would say. Right, so there you go. That's much better. I can see it's there, and I can see the object that I'm looking at, which is a good thing. So there it is. That's something. Okay, it's not actually bad. I quite like this camera angle. What I'm going to do though is I am going to start changing these values because it has changed a lot. So the height I'm going to reduce because it was too high. The mid-range I'm going to change it to around his hips, so that's too high still, like so. And then the bottom rig needs to come up a bit, so right on his foot. I might change the mid-rig and change the radius of it as well, so you can pull it in. No, I'm going to leave it out, that was fine. Might change the top radius a bit and the bottom radius. Let's just save it and see what happens. That looks a bit more neater to me actually. Right, let me just deselect this because I don't want that annoying lag that I keep seeing. I'm just going to select that, for example. There you go, it's running smoothly. Oh, it's highlighted it. Perfect. Now we haven't got some kind of GUI that indicates where our center of our mouse is, so it's very difficult to see where you're hitting. Okay. There we go. That looks so much smooth actually. I like it more. There's a glitch with my LODs. It looks like they've moved, so I had to look into that. This is another problem I did find when I was making this. It does sometimes highlight both objects, which we'll definitely look into and solve later on, but it's got the main thing which I want is the highlighting, so I'm happy with that. So that's done. Perfectly fine with that. There we go. This, I've noticed, it only happens with the LODs. So for example, if I come into these boxes over here and I remove the LODs, so I'm just gonna possibly keep the first one, LOD 0, and I shouldn't have actually added the rigid body on the second one, so I'm gonna leave it as that. So I'm just gonna delete that for now, and I'm gonna get rid of the LOD group for now so I can see it. I'm going to do the same on this one. I'm going to delete that, then I'm going to re-delete the LOD group and remove it. So this is why I don't currently like this method, because you do run into problems. I will be fixing it later on, but for now what we need to do, it works fine. Before I do finish this off, I'm just going to reposition something. I don't like the center one. And I'm going to take the look at target and I'm going to bring it in a bit more. I think that's a bit more smoother. Let's find out. So, that's my object. See my object, the one I've highlighted, good. Red. Yeah, you see, it's an issue with the LOD system. I don't know. I'll have to investigate that as soon as I figure it out, and then I'll make an update video on that. That's perfectly fine. But you can see now it's not doing the double highlight. So it's highlighting it. Good. So that's all for this tutorial, guys. We've figured out how to make the objects highlight. I do hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please do like and subscribe and follow and share this video if you think other people will find it helpful. And I will catch you in the next video where we will start grabbing these objects and pulling them towards the player. And we can actually throw them in the last video. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a fantastic video to make, and I shall see you again.